Hello everyone, this is a video for the 6.08 lesson, A New Age. During the late 18th century, political revolution brought the United States into being. The late 19th century saw an industrial revolution that changed American business, labor, government, and society. As the 20th century closed, yet another revolution changed the nation, this time a revolution in communications and information technology. As in the past, these changes brought opportunity for some and hardship for others, as jobs and whole industries were outsourced. Also, like the past, waves of immigrants arriving seeking the opportunities this land offered and creating both an expanding cultural mosaic and controversy. Goals for this lesson: recognize the challenges of interpreting recent history, describe changes in American business practices during the late 20th century, and analyze major demographic trends in the United States in the 1990s. Your lesson resources will have your reading guide, your lesson answer key, and this additional sheet you'll need, U.S. immigration trends. Continuing on, reading pages 922 through 930. Cultural politics in a changing nation. Journalism, it has been said, is the first rough draft of history. What does that mean? Newspapers and other media report events large and small as they happen. In reporting the present, the journalist often presents a profusion of detail. The journalist cannot have the perspective of the historian who views events through the filter of time. Looking backward from a distance that helps bring long ago events into focus, historians exercise judgment to determine what will persist in memory and what will fade. Like a writer going over a rough draft, a historian crosses out a great deal, rearranges and interprets in an attempt to distinguish what matters most. Which is not to claim the status of objective truth for the writing of historians. History, it has also been said, is written by the victors. Rather, that is to point out that even as historians strive for accuracy and objectivity, the closer you get to the present, the more numerous and variable are the interpretations of events and their significance. The remainder of this book deals with contemporary events. Time will tell which issues really matter. What follows constitutes a best attempt to transform a journalistic first rough draft into a reasonably accurate history of the very recent past of the United States. New economic trends. New economic trends. Starting in the 1970s, some people worried that Americans were losing their edge in the global marketplace. The United States faced growing foreign economic competition and seemed to be falling behind nations like Japan, with its successful automotive and electronics industries. In industries like steel manufacturing, American factories were closing as foreign competitors boosted their sales. Some predicted that China and India would soon displace the United States as the world's great superpowers. Things turned out quite differently. While manufacturing industries in the Rust Belt suffered, the economy got a boost from new high-technology businesses, which themselves were part of a technological revolution as great as the Industrial Revolution of the 18th and 19th centuries, a digital revolution that continues to this day. The Digital Revolution. The seeds of the digital revolution had been planted in the early 1960s during the Cold War when J.C.R. Licklider, a professor at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, was doing research for the U.S. Defense Department's Advanced Research Projects Agency. ARPA researchers wanted to find a way to transfer large amounts of data from government computers to the computers at universities and research labs doing government-sponsored work. Licklider had even bigger ideas. He imagined, as he described it, a thinking center that will incorporate the functions of present-day libraries together with advances in information storage and retrieval. It would be an intergalactic computer network, a vast interconnected array of computers that would allow someone using one computer to have access to that information on all the others. Others before Licklider had conjured similar visions, but his idea became reality, a Defense Department network called ARAPNet. By the 1980s, ARAPNet was linked to similar networks started by universities to form an interconnected network of networks called the Internet. The early Internet was hard to navigate and limited to a small number of users. But as Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, and others introduced innovations that made computers smaller, faster, and cheaper, the Internet began to find uses beyond government and university circles. In 1992, a big breakthrough came with the invention of the World Wide Web, the brainchild of the British physicist Tim Berners-Lee. Berners-Lee understood that with the right software programs called browsers and the right standards for the display of information, the billions of pieces of data on the internet could be organized into a highly flexible, easy to change, interconnected system. an electronic web of computer files linked to each other on the internet. By devising new rules and standards such as the URL, Universal Resource Locator, HTML, Hypertext Markup Language, and HTTP, Hypertext Transfer Protocol, Berners-Lee made it possible to leap effortlessly from one computer file to another, anywhere in the world. Complex computer language was replaced by easy-to-interpret images and links, making it easy to surf the web. During the 1990s, Berners-Lee's World Wide Web helped transform the internet into an information superhighway. People with no special training in computers were creating websites. Electronic mail was becoming a standard means of communication. Schools, businesses, governments, and individuals went online with their information. The internet was no longer the domain of a few experts. It was a vast public commons for the exchange of masses of information, text, images, sound, video. Like the telegraph and the penny press in the 19th century, and like radio and television in the 20th, the internet transformed the way Americans and people around the world communicated and shared information. To help navigate the ocean of digital data, researchers worked on developing a search engine, a kind of computer-generated map of the web to guide people efficiently through the maze of available content. After the early dominance of Netscape and Yahoo, a new search engine became the most popular. It was developed in the late 1990s by two graduate students at Stanford University, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, who called their invention Google, a misspelling of Google, the digit 1, followed by 100 zeros. Page and Brin ran their first version on a dozen computers in Page's dorm room and saved money by building computer housings out of Lego bricks. With their mastery of mathematics, they devised a way of calculating what they called PageRank, a way to rank web pages in order of their relevance and the search requests submitted by a user. And as you might guess, here's the picture of the inventors of Google. The math was sophisticated, but the results were transparent to users who turned to Google to help them sort quickly and easily through an ever-increasing amount of online information. Before long, one Google site was responding to hundreds of millions of search requests every day. The company's stated mission to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful conveyed how thoroughly the internet had transformed people's expectations about the ready availability of knowledge and information. High-tech boom. Just as the spread of the automobile had fueled the booming prosperity of the 20s, the spread of personal computers and the internet fostered economic growth in the latter half of the 1990s. The speedier creation and communication of information boosted productivity in web-savvy businesses, which helped create new wealth and new jobs. Unemployment and poverty rates fell. By 2001, the United States accounted for 22% of the world's production, far more than the British Empire at the height of its influence a century earlier. Jack Welch, the chief executive officer of General Electric, hailed internet commerce as clearly the biggest revolution in business in our lifetimes. The capital of the high-tech boom was a region near San Francisco nicknamed Silicon Valley, so called because silicon is a key material in this tiny integrated circuits or chips used in computers. In Silicon Valley, hundreds of companies sprang up to exploit the sudden hunger for new hardware, software, or internet-driven services. Since many companies doing business on the internet have web addresses ending in .com, the period of frantic investment in high-tech businesses is often called the .com boom. In economics, a boom is often followed by a bust. Indeed, the .com boom went bust in 2001 as overvalued companies failed to produce profits. But the boom that had shown that Americans still possessed an extraordinary capacity for innovation and entrepreneurship. The stronger companies such as Google and Microsoft survived the bust to become key players in the world economy. The internet and personal computers changed old ideas about production and work. People with network computers can work together without being in the same building. Businesses can bring together teams of people around the globe who would never have been united before. The term globalization has come to describe this trend toward interconnectedness and interdependence in business. With computers, the internet, cell phones, and other technologies, many corporations find they can employ an international labor force and work easily almost anywhere in the world. With the growth of With the growth of an information economy, many U.S. businesses began to engage in the practice of outsourcing, using laborers outside the company to provide certain services. Technology made it easy for U.S. businesses to contract with overseas labor to accomplish something once done locally. For example, a computer manufacturer in Texas might outsource its customer service operations by setting up a call center in India to respond to user questions. The firm hires English-speaking Indian technicians and pays them a lower salary than their American counterparts would receive, but a higher salary than many of their Indian counterparts receive. A puzzled computer user in Indiana might call a customer service and speak to a technician in New Delhi. Many American companies contracted with European and Asian companies where well-educated workers could do jobs in networked computers at lower rates of pay than American workers. As the practice of outsourcing grew, it led to concerns that the United States was giving up too many jobs to rising economies elsewhere, especially in Asia. Some American businesses moved their manufacturing or physical production operations to other countries in order to reduce costs. While this practice, called offshoring, led businesses to take advantage of cheaper labor, lower taxes, and perhaps less strict environmental regulations, it also put some Americans out of work. Workers in a North Carolina furniture factory, for example, might find their jobs moved to New Mexico. New England textile mills might move their production to the People's Republic of China, one of the most popular destinations for offshoring, with the world's largest labor force. Opponents of offshoring argue that the competition is unfair and that overseas workers often toil in unsanitary or unsafe conditions without the rights and representation that the American labor has fought for since the start of the Industrial Revolution. In the picture, U.S. companies move manufacturing to countries where labor was cheaper. Here, Chinese workers make athletic shoes for Nike. How new demographic trends, a changing population. While America has always been a quilt of many threads and colors, the nation's fabric was becoming even more intricate as the country moved toward the turn of the 21st century. From the 1930s to the mid-1960s, only 5 million legal immigrants entered the United States. But the Immigration and Nationality Act, passed in 1965, made it much easier for people from Latin America, the Caribbean, Asia, and Africa to become American citizens. Their numbers increased dramatically over the next 30 years. In the 1970s alone, the number of legal immigrants reached 4.5 million, in the 1980s 7.3 million, and in the 1990s 9.1 million. Many more came illegally, searching for work and better wages. Estimates of immigration between 1970 and 2000, legal and illegal, raised the figure to more than 28 million. The Immigration Act of 1965, which also opened the door to immigrants from the Eastern Hemisphere, gave priority to applicants with advanced skills and education, refugees fleeing political persecution, and to many family members of U.S. citizens. Over the next decade, the wave of immigrants from China, Korea, India, and elsewhere included many engineers, doctors, and scientists who continued in their professions in the United States. Others, highly educated but facing language barriers, found work in service industries or opened small businesses. By the late 1970s, changes in the immigration laws and communist takeovers in Southeast Asia brought new groups of people seeking safety and a better life. Many who came from Southeast Asia, especially those from Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, who lacked education and skills demanded by a modern economy, faced serious hardship and discrimination. As with earlier ethnic groups, new immigrants from Asia and Africa brought their cultures with them to the United States and added to the mix of ethnicities, languages, cuisines, customs, and religions that is America. As the 21st century opened, there were more Muslim Americans than Episcopalians and nearly as many Buddhists. They, along with 1 million Hindus and 250,000 Sikhs, comprise 3% of the United States population in 2000. Most newcomers live near the nation's borders and coastlines in New York, New Jersey, Texas, Florida, and especially California. By 2001, non-Hispanic whites were a minority of California's population. The large influx of people from Central and South America, previously concentrated in the Southwest and Florida, brought a range of cultural influences. The U.S. Census Bureau groups these people under the term Hispanic, a term widely used but insufficient to capture the varied backgrounds and experiences of Mexican Americans, Dominican Americans, Cuban Americans, Honduran Americans, and many more. Between 1971 and 1997, more than 8 million Hispanic immigrants came to the United States. Most of these immigrants retained strong family ties, increased their incomes after arriving, and lived as law-abiding Americans. Many immigrants entered the United States illegally,